So, no, wait till that compressor shuts the fan. So, welcome back. This is the Fiesta, which we got written off as a Cat S, and we thought it's not even that bad. Like, it's a few little things on the front until we saw the boot and we realised why it was a Cat S. But nonetheless, I have been given a task by Greenlight Insurance to buy, fix, and build a track car which they can do time attack in from the money that they got left over from breaking their Ford Focus. So we actually went with a MK7 ST, which we thought wasn't as bad as it is. Now within the last episode we went over all of the damage that the car had, and we also did some servicing bits, and we actually started doing the modifications as well. So we changed the oil and we actually put a baffled sump inside the sump. So I'm currently waiting for that sump gasket to dry. We're gonna crack on and we're actually gonna fix and address and actually dive down deeper into the damage that's actually happened to the front end. Now, it's a bit of a weird crash that this has had. It's not had a front on one, it's kind of just hit over here, and it's completely missed the front of the bash bar, but it's had a big enough impact on this front side that it's hit the radiator and it's pulled back a few of the brackets on the crash bar, and it's also snapped a couple of things as well. So from here, it's actually cracked the riv nut, which is holding the rad pack onto the crash bar. So I'm gonna see how it bolts up with the new crash bar, because I've only just noticed this. So we have got a new crash bar and we've got a load of stuff, so I'm gonna see how it bolts up before deciding whether to buy a rad pack, because this is gonna be a track car, so it doesn't have to be perfect. And I think it's gonna be secure enough from the bolts on the side. So if we're looking straight on from the car, the front crash bar actually looks perfect, the aircon looks perfect, and the intercooler looks perfect. Nothing has actually done any damage there. The thing that's got the damage is that you can see the two brackets on the crash bar. This one here, I can put my hand in between, and this one here, I can't. So you can see this is all of this front side has been knocked back. It's cracked it's cracked it here. Again, it's nothing important. It's not like an air feed or anything. It's just, yeah, it's just got a bit of a crack. And it's pushed the radiator all the way back, like far. It's a good inch back, and therefore it has cracked the riv nut in here. It's kind of pulled this bracket to a point, and then it cracked the riv nut. So we have got a new crash bar. Realistically, you probably just get away with taking it off and just bending this bracket back, because that's all the damage that's been done. But sometimes you never know just by looking by eye. So we have got a new crash bar because it wasn't expensive. Now the main thing we need to do, and the biggest worry about this car, is the rear ends. Let's go over and have a look at that. Now as you can see, the rear end has took an absolute battering. It's bent in all the boot floor at the back, and it's also bent in all the rear of the car as well. You can see the big crease here in the boot floor. Now this isn't ideal, and we definitely didn't see this. With the rear bumper on, it barely even looked like it had any damage. Now this is the biggest issue at the minute, because as you can see, the actual bolt-in for the rear crash bar is bent, and we need the rear crash bar to get the rear bumper on, etc, etc, etc. Now this is quite thin metal, so we need to get this to a body shop, and they're going to put that on a jig or whatever body shop things, and they're going to pull it back out. But to be able to get it to the body shop, we have to get it in a drivable state, and right now it's not a drivable state because the front end looks like this. The first thing we've got to do is actually start removing the crash bar. That's because I've lost my 13mm socket, right? I'm not much of a cheap bastard. I've been using a 1/2 inch, which is basically a 13, but it's a little bit smaller than a 13. Now the main bulk of the crash bar is actually held on by these 4 13mm bolts on each side, but I always take them off, then put one back in, just to make sure I've removed everything before I take it off. Because what you'll find is a lot is actually attached to the crash bar which you didn't recognise in the first place. Like this, well this, and well, you get the idea. And annoyingly, there's actually a ton of bolts behind the intercooler. So we're going to have to take that off as well. Now I definitely don't want to take off all the under tray. I don't think it looks like all the under tray is attached to the crash bar, but it can't be. There's no way it has to be, because there's some bolts just behind the intercooler here. There's 2 bolts behind the intercooler. So somehow The intercooler's got to come off. Now, me being a lazy bastard, I didn't want to undo the under tray, but the correct way to actually remove the intercooler was to take the under tray off, and there's a bolt which actually goes through a bush. Now, I found out you can actually just push this bush down. Not the best way, but it did work. So, there we go. And then, we can get the bolts behind the intercooler, which is attaching the under tray to the crash bar. But to get to that one little 8mm nut, I can literally see it there. To get to it, I'm going to have to remove the intercooler. Now, I have done crash car stuff before, but I've mainly only really done German stuff, and this is where you can see the difference between German stuff and, let's say, non-German stuff. It's like walking up a flight of stairs just to get some off. You've got to go the first, okay, then we've got to remove that, remove that, remove that, remove that, remove that, to remove this. Where you do see in like German stuff, it's usually thought out a little bit better, so they'll have like a bracket here on the side that just removes it all, instead of just, you know, doing one step at a time to remove a little 8mm nut, which removes this from that, and that from that, and that from that. Which is, I know is going to be a 7mm. Yep. I don't have one, because I've lost it. Now I'm hoping this is the final thing I have to take off so I can get to this little bloody bolt. Little tiny 8mm there, it could have just been in a different position. I've had a quick look round, and that looks like everything that connects the crash. That looks like everything that's connect the crash bar to the car. I think we send it again. Nice. Right. Sweet. You can clearly see how bent that is now. I think a bit of weld has cracked there. Yeah, it has. So that was obviously welded down there. I mean, you probably could just put that back and give it a bit of a but we've decided to not do on this one. But I think before we start putting this back together, I think now would be a good time to install one of our big modifications, because getting to this point was a little bit of a pain, and it's going to be even more of a pain when everything's back together. So instead of, you know, doing one job and then coming 3 steps back, I think we'll just do the modifications as we go on. And one of the first things we've got is it's a big intercooler. It's a big intercooler. Okay, so this is the standard intercooler which we just took off the Fiesta. And this is AirTech's big intercooler. Look at the size of this thing. But looking at this now, I'm going to have to go back on the plan that I just went back on, because this is definitely going to go in front of the crash bar. That is not going to go behind. So, we're going to have to continue how we were and put the crash bar back on. But for now, let's get the new crash bar and let's bolt it back up. We are going to include a list of costs right at the end to show you exactly how much this all cost. Lift, and then get one in. Okay. Woo! So the crash bar is on. All we've got to do now is just bolt down, bolt down the fan surround to the crash bar and just put everything back together pretty much, and then figure out how the hell we're going to install this intercooler. Now, there are a few cracks on this fan surround. So there's a crack here, and it's actually ripped one of the riv nuts out here, as I've shown you earlier, but that is really the only damage. So the fan's sitting fine. We've got 6 ways of bolting, not the fan, sorry, the radiator. We've got six ways of bolting the radiator surround to the crash bar, and only one of the riv nuts isn't there anymore. So I rang Neil, who's obviously the owner of Greenlight, and I said, what do you want to do with this, mate? Like, how far? How clean do you want it to be, kind of thing? And he said, as long as it doesn't affect the way it drives or really the way it looks, or it's not going to make a rattle, just do what you would do on your own car. And to me, one crack here, which isn't even on the intake, and one riv nut here, which has come out. I mean, if we were selling this car, like flipping it, then probably change it. But it is going to be a track car, and realistically, it's not going to affect anything. So we can continue with the build and not waste money on things we don't need. We can spend it more on mods. I said, look, if it was me, mate, I'd just crack on and just bolt it back up. He said, right, we'll do that then. So we're gonna bolt all the radiators around too. We're not gonna have a bolt here because obviously the riv nuts come out. But other than that, there isn't anything wrong with it. Okay, so this is the new intercooler, and this is the old one. So, I mean, I have had a quick look at the fit instructions, but most of it's just how to get to this point. Do you know what I mean? So, we're just going to we know how we remove the intercooler. So, all we've got to do is, I'm guessing we're going to have to swap these rubber grommets over. Now this is where I realised that I removed the old intercooler the wrong way. To put the new intercooler on, we have to bolt it up through the bottom, and to do that we have to remove the under tray. Now with the tight space you've actually got to get this into, and with the size of the intercooler, it does massively help having a friend to help. So huge shout out to Charlie from AMD for helping me with this, because I was struggling. We're just trying to find, obviously it's a bit loose here at the top, and this is heavy. This is at least like 3 times the weight of the original one. So there definitely needs to be some kind of bracket here, because we've got a thread at the top. The thread here at the top of the intercooler, and it's got to be, I reckon there's like kind of little bracket here, or something that bolts to the bottom here, because that's just flopping around, and there's a thread there for a reason. So we're trying to find, what if we've lost it on the unboxing, or not quite sure, because we have got an intake kit and airtake intake kit as well, so there's a lot in that box, and right now we can't find it. Aha! We found it. It was somewhere lying around in the box. So this is the bracket that we need, and I just put it up and I was like, that looks a bit wrong. How? Anyway, if you remember actually in the last video, this little bit of a bracket was actually bent back. So it was actually, there was a bit of a crease. Now I just initially thought that was the design of the bracket. I was wrong. That's not the design of the bracket. It's actually meant to be flat like this. And we've actually done a really good job of getting it flat. So I've just looked at it and gone, is that the same bracket? I swear I had a crease in it. Anyway, we've pulled it back and it's absolutely flat now. So the idea is we need to drill 2 holes. And we're going to have this bolted through here. And then we're going to push the radiator back, or the intercooler back like this. And we're going to drill 2 holes through this bracket here, and we're going to nut and bolt it, and that's going to keep it massively secure. Once this is on, we can actually build up the front end, and we can actually get it to the body shops. So we're going to bolt the bracket down, and we're going to push it back to where it needs to be, and we're going to mark 2 little holes. Now to make sure we don't pop a hole in the radiator, I'm actually going to put a piece of metal behind, just to be safe. And I'm going to get 2 nuts and bolts, and I'm just going to bolt it down. And now we can finally actually start putting up the new body parts. So we actually found a written off Fiesta, and we got everything that we needed from that. So we got the bonnet, bumper, and also the rear tailgate as well. Make sure to plug in everything, which may be a little bit... Oh, we need that. Okay, this didn't come with any of the fog lights. We need to swap the fog lights over from the old one. Hopefully we've got them. Okay, so there's a big difference between the new bumper and the old bumper. The new bumper has actually, it's got a plastic fog light housing, and you can actually see where a bulb just screws into that. So these are halogen, and this is actually, these look like LED. These look like LED fog lights. Now, it's one of those, it is a track car, I do really want the heavier unit in there. I'm going to say that Greenlight probably will want the fog lights in. So we're going to take off the LED fog lights out of this one, and we're going to transfer them over to the new bumper. So once we've transferred over the fog light, which we're probably going to remove in the future, but it is what it is, we can actually start putting on the bumper. Now the bulk of it's held on by 3 10mm where it meets the wheel arch, and these can be very, very fiddly. And then it's just finishing off bolting up the bumper to the wheel arch, and also there's a few bolts on the under tray underneath as well. The bumper is on. A little bit of a pain, not gonna lie. And that's meant because the other one was smashed, so I can't fully remember where all the bolts are meant to be, and blah, 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 blah. But I have got it on. We have to do a little bit of fiddling around with the crash bar because it was just a little bit off. But these 3 bolts on this side are an absolute pain. Well, the top one's okay and the bottom one's okay. The middle one is a bit of a nightmare to use. Many different extensions with many different, what I like to call a wobble head. I'm not 100% happy with the gap on this side. I'm not 100% sure why the gap's a little bit different on this side. But I don't think many people would notice just because I've been staring at it for 20 minutes. But the gap isn't, it's just at the top. So I'm not sure what's going on there. I've tried a load of different things to try to get rid of that gap, and it's just not getting rid of the gap. So a little bit annoying, not going to lie. But I don't know, I'm going to put all the car back together, and when the headlight's on, kind of test it then. Because right now I'm just staring at this fucking gap, and it's really annoying me. So let's put the headlights back on, and let's finish off this front end and see kind of how bad it is when it's all together. When the headlights back on, it might kind of pull it up and pull it all together, but right now I'm just working away for hours trying to get it right, and it's just not changing. I absolutely love cars which design their front end so you can remove the headlight without removing the bumper. So many cars nowadays you have to remove the bumper to remove the headlight. It's absolutely stupid because you're meant to be able to change a bulb at the side of the road, and 90% of cars now you can't do that. So well done Ford for actually making this a removable headlight quite easy. So I've been in a situation where I've been staring at this for over an hour, and all I'm noticing is every little imperfection in every little gap. And I think there's a bit, it's not perfectly lined up on this side, but I think my eyes are making it even worse for me because I've been looking at it for so long. Now, the car is going to be getting wrapped, so the headlight's going to be coming off, so I'm not going to sit here all day to perfect a gap when it's going to be removed when it's getting wrapped anyway. So I think right now it looks pretty good like that. I don't think you can really notice any gap. What I can notice is for some reason somebody put one of these on and it's absolutely atrocious. Do not do these things to cars because it looks horrendous, because somebody has to spend ages taking the glue off. Now I did try picking the glue off and it was not moving, and I did try some different chemicals and nothing was touching it. So the best thing to turn to in this situation is what they call a toffee wheel. Now the toffee wheel did get all the glue off really fast, but it did leave a few little scratch marks on the headlight. So the best thing I've got in the unit at the minute is just some polish, which I'm going to have to do by hand. Now I did do a good job of taking most of the scratches out. There are still a few on there, but by hand it did a really good job. So in the future we'll just get a polishing pad and some cutting compound. Now in the first video we actually installed a baffled sump, and we actually had to take the sump off the car, and obviously we had to reseal it. Now these engines are a little bit weird because they actually share a sump gasket with the rear main seal gasket, so we were a little bit worried if it was leaking or not. So we've let it dry, let's top it with oil and let's pray that it's not leaking. Right, let's fire it up. Now the bonnet is something else that was damaged in the crash. It was only minuscule, but it does need to be changed. So first of all we need to change over the washer jet pipe things, and then we can actually remove the 4 bolts holding it on, which are just 10 mils. Right, I'm going to attempt it myself. Normally bonnets are quite hard, but this one is actually quite light. Now the real fun begins. Oh, not even fucking scared. So when putting on a new bonnet, you'll actually see a circle of white paint. So that's where the bonnet's been put on in the correct place, and then it's been painted. So when you're actually trying to line it up, just make sure that you're covering those white holes with the washer, and it should realistically go back down the same place. I've got this side pretty much perfect, but you can just see the outline of the side, so I'll show you that one. So you can just see in the top one the outline of the white circle. So I'm 0.5 millimeter off on this side, but I think it's going to be fine. So let's push it down and let's pray it lines up well. Now before you slow it down, make sure it's actually neat on the corners, because if it was going to hit, you would see. Now you can spend absolute hours trying to line up a bonnet like this, and to be quite frankly, you'll never get it perfect. Now it is going to a body shop, so we've got it where it's happy, and we're going to let them finish it off. Now before we can send it off to the body shop, we may as well just change the boot lid. Now the boot lid is a little bit more difficult because the new one, which I've got right next to me, hasn't actually got the spoiler on, it's actually got the spoiler off. I'm guessing people make a bit of money off selling the spoilers. Now that's hopefully not too stressful because it looks like it's bolted. And I can't really see much glue on there either, so I just hope that these are just bolted on and they're not bonded in any way, because that'll be a pain. And also we've got to figure out, because the people on here, they've just chopped the wiring in there, which makes sense to get it off quick. But obviously we need to reuse wiring, so we need to see where it comes through and where it unplugs. Got a loom here, but I can't see anywhere where it unplugs, because that goes right up into the headliner and all the way to the front of the car. We're going to have to probably take out all the wiring through the back and pull it all the way through, and then try to find a way to feed it back through onto the new boot lid. So first of all, we're going to remove the spoiler. Now there's 4 little torque bolts on the outside, and there's actually 2 little 8mm on the middle behind these little flappy doors. Now I'm hoping with just a little bit of a pull, it'll come off. Now as you can see, the wiring actually goes through the spoiler into the brake light, so we're going to have to remove that as well. So the two wires that you're seeing there, one of them is actually another washer jet. It's actually the one of the washer tubing for the rear washer jet. And the other one is just the brake light. Look how ugly it looks without a spoiler on. Oh my god. The thing that might be tricky here is that we're going to have to feed these out, which will be fine. But I think trying to feed these back through the other boot lid might be a bit difficult. So there's a grommet there, so pull that and push that through. So I've got this bit, which is actually through, but it's still not coming. So there's a bunch of wiring. I've had a look at the other one. There's a bunch of wiring here. So the wiring must go, I mean, obviously, I didn't think about that, but it'll obviously go through here into the door lock mechanism. So we're gonna have to pull all these plastics off as well, and then pull the whole lot through, and then somehow find a way to get that all the way back up here. Well, there's no point whinging. Let's just crack on with it and get all these plastics out of the way. Okay, it looks like this is the only bit of wiring that goes to the back. So I think this one plug then separates off to this. So I think we only need to pull this one plug off. And once you've unbolted that one plug, you can actually pull it through with quite relative ease, to be honest. Oh my god, trying to get this through there is going to be a bloody nightmare. Right, so that's all the wiring gone. We can now take off the boot lid. Now the boot lid is really easy to get on, it just makes it a little bit difficult because it's a lot heavier and it's held up by the struts. So once you take those struts off, you've got to hold all of that weight. So you have to decide which way you're going to do this first. I've attempted this in multiple different ways and I never seem to get it right. I usually get the bolts hand tight, then I take off the struts and then I balance it on my head and then I can undo the bolts with my hands and then remove the boot lid. Now I definitely didn't want to scratch the roof or scratch the rear quarter, and definitely didn't want to smash the glass on the boot lid, so I asked for Ronnie's help for this one. Now since the wiring on the new boot lid had just been cut, I actually had to get it out of the way, so I had to remove all of the plastics again and remove the wiring again from the new boot lid to then replace it with the old wiring from the old boot lid. Does that make sense? It might not make sense. Now feeding up the wiring actually worked out a lot better and was a lot easier than I thought. I thought I'd be there for hours, but it didn't take me too long. Yes, come on, oh, it's there. That's so annoying. I'm literally, yes. So we've got some string. So what I'm going to do is, because this hole that we've got to pull that through is absolutely tiny. So I'm going to push this through, hope it comes through the other side, tie it around the washer tubing, and then pull it back through. I mean, in theory, it's genius. Get fucking wrecked! And then it's just a case of installing the spoiler back on, and we are finished. Hello? Hello. So that is everything that needs to be done on the Fiesta, so it can actually be taken to the body shop now and get that rear end pulled out. We are going to film a little bit about that as well, because I'm super intrigued on how they're going to do it. So I know you guys will be as well. So we're going to try and film as much as that process as possible. Now, it is a different colour, don't get me wrong, I do know and we did realise that, but the car is going to be getting fully wrapped anyway, so it's not a big deal. And that's why I'm not fully bothered on making sure all the panels line up perfectly and the lights line up perfectly and everything, because it's all going to be coming off anyway when it's going to be getting wrapped. Now the plan is we're going to actually be taking this to the body shop to get this rear end pulled out. He's going to fit the rear bumper and then we're going to be taking it on a track day. We want to see what times we can get out of this car in a standard base form as it is. So we're not going to be doing any modifications until we've got a lap time around Brands Hatch. Then we're going to come home. Why is my camera being annoying? Then we're going to come back and we're going to do a load of modifications, suspension-wise, handling-wise, brake-wise, power-wise, and then we're going to see what times each of those modifications make a difference to the overall time of the car. Does that make sense? It makes sense to me. So, thanks for watching, everyone. I will see you in the next video when we're going to be pulling out that rear end and we're going to see how big of a job it is, if someone like that finds this easy, or if this is actually classed as a big job for a body shop as well. So I'm super intrigued to see that next episode of how this comes out of the back. So for now, I love you all, and we'll see you in the next one.